They told Kylian Mbappé to wait outside, not because the hotel was full, not because the suite was booked, because the man at the door looked at a hoodie, a quiet face, and a pair of clean sneakers, and decided that didn't match the marble, the chandeliers, or the price of the room. Laurent Bellier stood under the gold-lit entrance like he owned the air itself. Sharp suit, thin mouth, hair slicked back so tightly it looked painful. He didn't raise his voice at first. He didn't need to. Men like him had learned that disrespect sounds more polite when it is spoken softly. Mbappé said his name once, calmly, the same way he said it in press rooms, the same way he said it after scoring in finals, the same way he said it when grown men who had once doubted him suddenly wanted a photo. But Bellier barely blinked. He glanced at the clipboard, then at the door, then at Mbappé's face, as if the world's fastest footballer was just another stranger asking for a favor. Inside the hotel, people turned their heads. A woman in pearls froze with her glass halfway to her lips. A receptionist looked down at her keyboard and pretended not to see. A security guard shifted his weight and said nothing. Nobody wanted to be the first person to interfere when power was wearing a better suit than they were. And then Bellier did the one thing that changed the whole night. He smiled. Not kindly, not warmly. The kind of smile that belongs to people who think humiliation is part of the job. "Reservations only," he said. Mbappé looked past him, through the glass, into the lobby, where a young hotel worker in a too-big vest had already gone pale. The boy was holding a tray in one hand and a folded notebook in the other. He had been trying to help. He had been trying to keep this from becoming ugly. Instead, it became unforgettable. Because the boy was not just a hotel worker. His name was Samir Ben Said, and in his pocket was a torn envelope that could decide the rest of his life. And what Laurent Bellier did not know was that someone else in the lobby had already started recording. By the time he was born on December 20th, 1998, in Bondy, Seine-Saint-Denis, Paris, France, Kylian Mbappé had already inherited a kind of battle. Bondy was not soft. It was a working-class suburb northeast of Paris, the kind of place people mention with lowered voices or unfair assumptions. But to the families who lived there, it was called the city of 1,000 possibilities for a reason. You did not grow up there by accident. You grew up there by endurance. His father, Wilfried Mbappé, was his first coach. Not the kind in a polished tracksuit with a whistle and a sponsorship deal. The kind who teaches you to keep your chest up when life keeps pressing down. A Cameroonian father with hard lessons and simple standards. A mother, Faiza Lamari, of Algerian Kabyle origin, fierce and protective, with the sharpness of someone who had spent years defending her child before the world even knew his name. She did not raise a son to be fragile. She raised him to be ready. In Bondy, Kylian grew up with Cristiano Ronaldo posters on his bedroom wall. He studied the game like other boys studied maps. He moved like he was already late for something the rest of the world had not yet seen. At 14, Real Madrid invited him for a trial. Florentino Perez himself met him. Most children would have folded from the pressure alone. His mother said no, not because she lacked vision, but because she had more of it. She knew the wrong move at 14 can become a prison at 24. So he stayed in France. He signed with AS Monaco at 16, then Paris Saint-Germain in 2017, first on loan, then permanently. By 19, he had helped France lift the 2018 FIFA World Cup and became only the second teenager in history, after Pelé, to score in a World Cup final. In 2022, he scored 4 goals in the final against Argentina, and even in loss, he stood like a man too big for defeat. In 2024, he finally joined Real Madrid, the childhood dream he had once imagined through a bedroom wall. Number 9 now, number 7 once, at PSG. A net worth bigger than most people can picture. Speed that made defenders look frozen. French, Spanish, English, Portuguese, Arabic. A boy from Bondy who turned motion into a language. But the part people forget is this. He was never built only for fame. He donated his entire €500,000 World Cup 2018 bonus to a children's charity. He opened a football academy in Bondi for underprivileged youth. He is humble in private, explosive on the pitch, loyal to family, and deeply tied to the woman who still knows exactly how to make him listen. Faiza negotiated his Real Madrid contract personally, not because he could not do it, because she understood what loyalty looks like when money enters the room. That night, standing at the hotel entrance, he saw something in Samir that made the old Bondi ache come back into his chest. Samir Ben Said was 19, thin in a way that came from skipping lunch more than from genetics, and he had the hands of someone who had learned to carry things carefully, because breaking them would be expensive. He worked nights at the luxury hotel while attending a public hospitality school during the day. He was supposed to be invisible, polite, efficient, never too loud, never too slow, never inconvenient. But Samir had a secret. At the back of the staff locker room, under a stack of spare linens, he kept a notebook full of pastry sketches. Not childish doodles, real ones. Layered tarts with citrus glaze, chocolate domes that looked like polished stones, sugar spirals, plate designs. He copied the dessert menus from the hotel's Michelin star restaurant during his breaks and redrew them at home with tiny corrections, like a boy teaching himself how to dream in fine detail. His mother, Nadia, worked the night shift cleaning offices near Gare du Nord. She came home with bleach in her sleeves and fatigue in her bones. Her hands were always dry, the knuckles cracked in winter. Once, when Samir was 15, she sold the thin gold ring she had worn since marriage so he could pay for a second-hand chef's knife set and the Metro card to get to class. She never told him until weeks later, when she saw the new knife roll on his bed and smiled like she had just seen a prayer answered. Samir had already lost things for doing the right thing. A month before the hotel incident, he found a wallet with more cash than his family spent in a week. He returned it. The guest thanked him with a tight smile and left a complaint about Samir being too slow on the staff review board because he had stopped to do what was honest. That write-up cost him his chance at a premium internship rotation. He knew exactly what decency could cost. Tonight, he had only been trying to help. He had seen a tall man at the door in a black cap and unremarkable jacket, carrying himself like someone used to being watched. Samir recognized him instantly. Of course he did. He had grown up watching Mbappé destroy teams that had looked stronger on paper. He had copied his runs on a small patch of grass behind his building. He had even once told his little sister, "That man moves like he's late for a future." So, when Laurent Bellier started asking questions about reservation numbers and guest lists, Samir stepped forward and said, "Sir, he is Mbappé. It was meant to help. It did not." Bellier snapped his head around, and his face tightened with the kind of irritation reserved for people he believed should know their place. "Did I ask you?" he said. Samir lowered his eyes. "No, monsieur." Bellier looked at the notebook in Samir's hand, saw the drawings of desserts, and made the sort of cruel guess insecure men often make when they want to feel taller. "You spend less time working than playing artist," he said, loud enough for the lobby to hear. "Maybe that is why you will never rise above this desk." The words landed hard. A few guests pretended to study the floral arrangement. A woman in a red coat stared at her phone. Nobody moved. Nobody wanted their own evening spoiled by a scene involving a young worker and a rich man's temper. Samir's cheeks burned. He tried to explain that the notebook was from school. Bellier cut him off. "Enough. Back to your station." That was when Mbappé saw Nadia's son do something that cost him dearly. Samir didn't argue. He didn't insult the man back. He didn't make himself small with lies either. He simply picked up the dropped tray, straightened the papers Bellier had knocked from his hand, and said, "I was only trying to help." That was the kind of courage that no camera celebrates. The quiet kind, the expensive kind. Mbappé looked at the boy, then at the manager, and something in his expression went still. For a second, the luxury hotel disappeared. Bondi took its place. The hard apartment walls, the posters, his mother's voice telling him to speak only when he meant it, Wilfred waking him before dawn to train until his legs shook. The years of people saying he was too young, too flashy, too fast, too much. The memory of every door that had been closed politely. The memory of every adult who thought a child from a rough suburb could be measured by shoes or accent. Mbappé knew that humiliation. He had grown up breathing near it. He was good with pain because he had met it early. And now, in a hotel that smelled like expensive perfume and old money, he saw it being handed to someone else. When he found out the full story 10 minutes later, it did not come from a journalist or a bodyguard. It came from a shaky video sent by a staff member who knew how ugly the moment looked. The clip had already been forwarded twice. Samir's voice, Bellier's tone, the way the lobby had gone silent. The video was short, but it held enough truth to start a fire. Mbappé watched it once, then again, not with anger, with focus. He remembered Faiza Lamari standing over a contract table years earlier, refusing to let anyone rush her son into a life that did not fit. He remembered her saying in that calm voice that terrified negotiators more than shouting ever could, that dignity is not a luxury. He remembered Bondi, where people learned to speak carefully because pride could turn expensive fast. He remembered the boys who wanted one shot, and the adults who gave them zero patience. Then he looked up and made the decision no one in the room would hear him announce. He called one person. That was all. His phone stayed at his ear for less than 2 minutes. He spoke in French first, then a little Spanish, then a few precise English words. No rant, no theatrics, just exact sentences. The kind built by someone who knows how to move rooms with fewer words than other men use to order coffee. On the other end, the person listening went quiet. Mbappé hung up and said to his driver, "Take me back there." But what Mbappé was about to do, nobody expected. Not the victim, not the villain, not the world. By the time his car returned, the hotel entrance had changed shape. Someone had spread the video. A staff member, a guest, maybe both. Phones were out now. More eyes, more silence. Laurent Bellier looked 10 years older than he had an hour earlier. The same polished suit now seemed too stiff for him, like a costume borrowed from a man with more courage. Mbappé stepped out in a dark coat, simple and clean. No flash, no entourage drama. Just him, shoulders relaxed, face composed, walking with the same economy he used when gliding past defenders. He did not hurry, he did not need to. Every step carried the certainty of a man who had already won bigger battles than this. The lobby parted before him. A receptionist swallowed. The security guard who had said nothing earlier suddenly found his own reflection interesting. Bellier straightened his tie too quickly and stepped forward with a smile that had arrived too late to be real. "Monsieur Mbappé," he said, voice thin, "there has been a misunderstanding." Mbappé stopped a few feet away, close enough to be heard, far enough to keep the dignity of the room intact. "You judged the wrong person tonight," he said. It was quiet, no threat in it, no performance, just truth. Bellier's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes shifted toward Samir, then to the staff phone still recording, then to the guests who now understood exactly what kind of man he had been for the last 15 minutes. Shame crept up his neck in a slow, visible wave. Not defeat. Shame. The kind that comes when a person finally hears himself spoken back in public. Samir stood frozen near the column, his tray trembling in one hand. He could not decide whether to breathe. Mbappé turned toward him and asked, "You wrote those?" He meant the sketches. Samir nodded once. "Yes." Mbappé looked at the notebook, then back at him. "They are good." It was such a small sentence that it nearly broke the boy. Bellier tried one more time. We were following policy. We did not know. Mbappé cut him off with a glance. Not rude, just final. That is the problem. The room went still again. Then he did something nobody had predicted. He asked for Laurent Bellier's direct line to the owner of the hotel group, right there in front of everyone, and he made the call on speaker. No shouting, no humiliation, just a steady voice carrying into the marble lobby. When the owner answered, Mbappé explained exactly what had happened. Not every detail. Enough. Then he said, "I'm leaving in 5 minutes. Before I go, I want you to meet Samir Ben Said." Bellier stared at him, confused now in a way that felt almost childlike. Mbappé held up Samir's notebook. "I'm not here for a room," he said. "I'm here for this boy's future." The owner was silent on the line. Then Mbappé explained the rest, and the lobby changed again. He asked for Samir to be placed, immediately, in the hotel's elite pastry apprenticeship program under the head chef who ran the restaurant's desserts. Not a pity internship. A real seat. A real contract. He asked that Samir's school fees for the rest of the year be covered through a private foundation tied to his own Bondi Academy. He asked for a paid position that would not force the boy to choose between learning and surviving. Then, in the same call, he asked for a second name to be put on payroll, Nadia Ben Said, a day-shift cleaning supervisor role, stable hours, better pay, health coverage, no more night trains, no more coming home with aching hands and no sunlight. 2 miracles in one day, one for the son, one for the mother. Samir did not understand at first. His face went blank with shock, like his mind had stepped out of the room before his body did. Then the words reached him all at once. His knees bent slightly. He grabbed the edge of the reception desk with both hands. His mouth opened, but nothing came out except a rough breath. "Me?" he finally whispered. Mbappé gave a small nod. The phone call ended. The lobby did not speak, not even Bellier. A guest near the piano had started crying quietly into her hand, embarrassed by her own tears. Samir's fingers shook so badly he had to set the notebook down before he dropped it. Then the hotel manager, still standing under the chandelier, lowered his eyes for the first time all night. The internet had already seen enough. By morning, the clip was everywhere. The question was no longer whether a hotel had embarrassed Mbappé. The question was why a luxury place had mistreated a young worker in front of everyone, and why the boy had been punished for trying to help. People who had never met Samir wrote messages. Chefs from Marseille, Lyon, Madrid, and Casablanca asked to see his sketches. One pastry account posted 3 of his drawings and called them unexpectedly brilliant. Another said his plating showed instinct, not just practice. A week later, the hotel issued a public apology. Bellier was removed from front-of-house duties and reassigned after a review. He did not become a hero because of this, but he did become quieter, more careful. The next time a young worker came through the lobby with a dream in his pocket, he did not laugh at it. Maybe that was his first real apology. Samir's life split open in 2 directions. One path led back to debt and doubt. The other led to a kitchen where talent finally had room to breathe. He chose the second. His first week in the pastry program, the head chef noticed he had a clean hand with chocolate work and an unusually steady eye for balance. By the second week, the chef gave him his own station during service. By the second month, one of his desserts was added to the seasonal menu with his name on the card. Small print, big meaning. And Nadia? Nadia walked into the hotel cafeteria on her first day as supervisor in the same navy work shoes she had worn for years, only now she was not invisible. A younger cleaner asked her how it felt. Nadia looked down at her hands, flexed the fingers once, and said, "It feels like I can breathe." One evening, after the first paycheck cleared, Samir came home and found her at the stove in her work uniform, stirring lentils and onions in a dented pot. She had not changed yet. She had been waiting without making a big deal of it, the way practical mothers do when they are trying not to scare happiness away. She looked at him once, saw his face, and knew. "You ate?" she asked. He shook his head. She nodded toward the sink. "Wash your hands." He did. When he turned back, she was still watching him, one hand on the wooden spoon, the other resting on the counter like she had just steadied herself after a long climb. He tried to speak, but the words tangled. Nadia did not ask for the whole story. She did not need every detail to understand that something had changed. "Sit," she said. Samir sat. For a while, neither of them moved. The pot hissed softly. The window was cracked open. A car passed outside. Then Nadia finally looked at him and said the one sentence that carried all the weight in the room. "I knew your hands were meant for more." That was it. No speech, no tears on command. Just the truth, spoken by a mother who had sold a ring, worked nights, and kept faith alive through the years when no one else could see it. After that, the change spread. The hotel launched a young talent review for staff from underrepresented backgrounds. A small thing, on paper. But it opened doors for porters, cleaners, kitchen assistants, and interns who had ideas no one had bothered to notice before. A video of Samir decorating his first restaurant tart went viral in the culinary world. His story was shared with youth academies, trade schools, and community centers far beyond Paris. Mbappé's Bondi Academy received new applications from kids who had never believed a luxury world would make room for them. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, the truth stayed simple. Kylian Mbappé did not rescue a stranger because he wanted applause. He did it because he remembered what it felt like to be underestimated in a place where people assume they already know your story. Bondi taught him that dignity is earned twice, once by the person who survives and once by the person who refuses to look away. That night at the hotel, beneath the chandeliers and the cameras and the polished silence of the rich, he reminded everyone of something they should have known already. A champion is not only the man who outruns the world, it is the man who stops, turns back, and lifts somebody else with him. Drop your city and country in the comments. If this story moved you, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss the next one. Because the greatest thing a champion can do is not score the goal. It is to lift someone else off the ground.